Um, so we'll just call the meeting to order. I want to thank everybody for coming to the December 2nd Agassiz virtual LSC meeting. I know we got a couple of people still trying to log on, and we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and then start our roll call. So I'll start the roll call. Oliver Williams, parent rep.
Tina Holder King, parent rep.
Mira Weber, principal.
Jackie Price, community rep.
Eric Meta, parent rep.
Dave Rent, teacher rep.
Michael Allen,
Nick Hall, teacher rep.
Yep.
Got you,
Sorry,
Nick.
Michael.
Thank you. Got you, Michael.
Yep.
All right. So I've got myself, Tina, Mira, Jackie, Shirag, Dave, Michael, and Nick.
I'm here.
Who's that?
Carrie just made it in.
Yeah.
Carrie? Yep.
About that? Yeah, I'm in.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
And Marilyn's here as well. I don't know if you named her.
Marilyn? Nope. What about Sarah? Are you here, Sarah?
I didn't see Sarah come in yet.
Okay. All right. We have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started. I will start the meeting with a motion to approve the agenda. Everyone received the agenda prior to the meeting and had an opportunity to take a look at it. The agenda was posted on the website and available for everyone to see. And so there is a motion on the floor for the approval of the agenda. Is there a second?
I second.
Motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion or any questions about the agenda?
Only thing I have a question about is the January meeting date. So, Mira, I know you sent out an email targeting January 13th, and I know previously we had voted on a January 6th meeting. So just wanting clarification around that.
Yeah, so originally the meeting is scheduled for January 6th. When we approved these meeting dates, we didn't really have a picture of what things would look like. And as that picture became more clear, this meeting was already on the books. We're in somewhat of a conundrum because ideally we would cancel this meeting and yield to the new council that is coming in starting on the 11th. But we don't have that option because we're past the opportunity to do that. And so as it stands, this meeting has been already advertised to the public, and so we would ideally have to. This is a regular meeting, so we would be obligated to have the meeting.
En la gaveta. Oliver, is there any opportunity where you just post 48 hours in advance or anything like that to cancel a meeting?
Okay, so the rules are that to cancel a regular meeting, you have to give 10 days advance notice, which we're within. The problem is that posting has to be approved by the council. And so we're not in a situation, while we have time to post it, we're not in a situation where we can seek approval because we don't have, it's not on the agenda tonight. And so we could motion to add it to the agenda, which is why I wanted to have this discussion. But if we did, even if we added it, we couldn't vote on it. We could only discuss it.
Got it. Well, then I guess January 6th would be a short agenda. I don't really know.
It would be, there is I think it is, I don't know, a professional courtesy not to enter the new year with agenda items for a new council. And so I would suggest that we didn't do that. And so maybe it may be an opportunity to have public participation only, which we would be required to have public participation at least. We would call the meeting to order, roll call, approve the agenda, public participation adjourn. That's essentially what it would be. Any other thoughts on that? How do you guys feel about that?
Well, I guess my only question about that would be, could I present on like up-to-date reopening information? And I mean, it wouldn't require any action items for anyone other than myself if there are questions about reopening.
That's key.
Because
I think that's the key. I don't want to leave action items for the next council.
right. And then the 13th, because it's an organizational meeting only, then that council would just kind of set up for the rest of the year, I guess. So
Right.
maybe we do like the January 6th meeting and I just present if there is any updates on reopening kind of stuff. And then the 13th would just be an organization meeting for the next council.
That sounds good to me.
Okay. Everyone, is that okay? I mean, are people amenable to that? I see some nods, some thumbs. Thank you. Okay. All right.
All right, so there's a motion on the table. I'm sorry, Tina, did that answer your question? Okay. There's a motion on the table to approve the agenda. It's been seconded. All in favor? By show of hands? Can you get the count for me, Mayor? I can't see it.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Who am I missing? Anyone? Sarah's not here, right? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so unanimous. All right.
10 approvals.
All right, and it was seconded by Mira. All right. Tina also sent out the minutes for everyone. There was no edits requested.
I'm sorry, Oliver. I'm sorry, Oliver. Just to go back, I'm sorry. The agenda was seconded by Nick, I believe.
I think Mira and I did it at the same time. So pick one of us.
I got you.
So
Thank you.
I keep jumping in.
Thanks, guys. All right, so Tina sent out the minutes. There was no edits, so it should be the same as the draft that we received a little while back. I'll motion to approve the minutes that you received in draft form as well as finalized within 48 hours of the meeting. Is there a second for an approval of the minutes? All right, Shirag and Mira on that one, thank you. The motion has been seconded. Is there any questions or discussion? As I said, there were no edits requested, but is there any discussion on the minutes?
Is this
My
for,
only question, oh, go ahead, Carrie.
sorry about that. Is this for both the last regular meeting as well as the special meeting? Are we doing this at once or are we separating them?
That's a good point. I did not include the special meeting minutes to be approved, but since it is not, since we've already have a motion on the floor, that would be for regular minutes, and then I will motion a second time for the special minute. And any other questions on that? Thank you very much, Gary. Appreciate that. So there's a motion on the floor to approve the minutes from the last regular meeting, and that motion has been seconded. Did anyone want to retract their second now that we know that it is for the last regular meeting? Okay. All in favor to approve the minutes from the last regular meeting? Get the count, Mayor?
Oh, yeah, of course I did. Unanimous.
Okay.
I abstained.
Oh, just kidding. My fault.
All right,
Sorry.
10, 1.
And no, and I miss abstaining too because I wasn't there.
Okay, so I lied. So there's 8 yeses, 2 abstentions. No,
All right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, I'm correct. 8 yeses, 2 abstain.
Okay. So this motion is a motion to approve the minutes from the special meeting held, I believe, November 17th, 6 p.m. The meeting was called by 4 members, and that meeting was held, and the minutes were sent out the following Saturday, I believe, and I believe everyone received the minutes. I don't remember there being a request for edits. If I'm wrong, could someone let me know now. I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't really know how they pertain to the meeting. So
No, there
I will.
were no requests for edits.
Okay. Okay. Good. All right. So motion is to approve the minutes from the special meeting dated November 17th. And so I'll put that motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I second it.
All right. Nick and
seconds.
Chirag has seconded. Okay. All right. Special.
Can
All
I
right.
ask a question? Oh, sorry, are we not at that part?
Yep. Well, go ahead. It's been seconded. Go ahead.
How is it if you weren't there, do you abstain? I mean, is there guidance on that?
No, it's your individual choice. I wasn't at the meeting, so I'll abstain. But the meeting minutes were sent out, and you had an opportunity to take a look at them. If you looked at them and you feel like they met the requirements of a meeting or a special meeting, you could approve it if you wanted to. It's up to individuals. Since I can't speak to whether the minutes match the conversations that were had, I will abstain. And so each individual member makes their own decisions about that. So the motion has. Yes.
I just want to say, the other side of that too is since the recording is available, if you watch the recording and happen to review the minutes, then, you can make a decision that way. So saying there are options because it was recorded.
All right. So motion's on the table to approve the minutes from the special meeting. The motion has been seconded by Nick and Chirag. Second. And so motion to approve the minutes. All in favor? All right. Can I have the count, Mira? I will be abstain.
1, 2, 3 yeses.
Okay. How many noes?
I don't know. You didn't ask yet. Any no's?
Oh, any noes? Anyone abstain?
Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
All right. Motion does not pass. The minutes from the special meeting were not approved. So here's the deal with that. It would be, because there are members from this council who will carry over to the new council, for continuity of public record, you have the option to present these minutes at your operation meeting or your first meeting. You have 60 days from today's date, from today's date, to have the minutes approved. That should get you to your next meeting. And so your next regular meeting. So at that point, you guys can present this and then just as old business, get the minutes approved. Okay?
Thanks.
All right. No problem. All right. So we're going to move to the next item of the agenda, which is the principal's report. Mira, I will let you take over from here.
Okay. I have 2 computers going here, so I'm going to share the other one. Bear with me 1 minute. Okay, so I'm excited that we are here and that we get to share publicly the work that our students have done through our renaming inquiry in partnership and through the equity lens with the CPS Equity Office. So tonight I am going to go through a number of slides that really highlight first kind of how we framed this work and then the data, and then we will have an LSC discussion. The LSC is charged with ranking in 1, 2, 3 order, the final 3 names. Those rankings then get sent, our equity office will review them, and then the Board of Education has the final vote on which name gets selected for our school. So as we start, I am going to just take us through what framed our work. So we were focused on the CPS instructional core. We talked a lot about the emphasis of our community, identity, relationship building as essential and integrated parts of the work that we're doing. We looked at this work through the CPS equity lens and really coming at this from the who was most impacted and prioritizing our subgroups. And then we anchored our values in our current mission, vision, and graduate statements to reflect the values that our school community holds, whether they were represented in the current mission, vision, and graduate statements or not. We did come up with our core values, and these are the values that were represented across our stakeholders. When you think of community, diversity, learning, equity, and anti-racism. And then we also focused on our 4 pillars, which are the academics, arts, athletics, and IB. And when we think of those, the IB and the academics and the student-driven inquiry, the transdisciplinary themes of how all these concepts overlapped and the work that the students were doing in thinking about someone to represent our school or something to represent our school that would really address these different components that we framed our work in. So just to highlight the actual survey itself, after we shared the nominations, we did have 436 participants in our survey. 25 of those participants turned in duplicates. One of those was then deleted so that there were no duplicates. We also had some who, because we did leave on Catherine Johnson and Harriet Tubman, they were listed twice. We also deleted any responses where someone may have selected that name as 2 of the choices in the 3 that they received. So in total, we had 1,129 votes. You can see here the number of parents, students, staff, alumni, and community. And then we broke down those categories by people of color and white participants. In the slides, when we go further, you'll also see the people of color broken out. And then at the bottom of this slide, you'll see our overall student demographics, just to have a better understanding of what the student population at our school looks like.
Hey, Mira, one question. Do you know the percentage of Native American for our school student population?
I don't have that offhand, no.
You and mommy?
Can I ask whoever is unmuted to mute? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time. I can't see the whole screen, I'm sorry. So then we'll move into of the responses that we got. If you can look here at the actual nominations that were put forward, these were the final nominations that our students put forward. You can see a breakdown by stakeholder group of who voted, how many votes each candidate received. And so in yellow on the far right, and this is just based on total number of votes received, the top 3 would have been Catherine Johnson, Harriet Tubman, and Rosa Parks. We'll go further though, however, because it was always our intention and talked about heavily that we would prioritize those most impacted, and it wouldn't just necessarily be about total votes that a nomination received. So we're going to go into that now. What you can see here of the survey results is that for people of color, when you separated out white and people of color, you can see that, again, Harriet Tubman, Catherine Johnson, and Rosa Parks were the top 3. Moving further, this is just a way of breaking it down by percentage points of how many the top 2 received. And I'm sorry, it should be highlighted for Rosa Parks there. Harriet Tubman had a 19.45 response percent for people of color, 18.07 for Catherine Johnson, and 11.98% for Rosa Parks. Then what we did is we went further to break down people of color, because we know that that is one, larger subgroup. And because of our namesake being holding racist beliefs specifically to our Black and Brown families, we highlighted the Black and Black multiracial so that you can see here which how many number of votes each candidate got by breaking down the people of color even further. So what you'll see is that I've highlighted here that this is Rosa Parks, the grand total number of votes for Black and multiracial. And then I also did it by students because we prioritized our students throughout this process. Moving forward, you'll see Harriet Tubman, again, grand total for Black and Black multiracial, and then again for our student population. And then you'll go to the last of the top three, which was Katherine Johnson. And again, the grand total, and then that for our students. Beyond that, we also looked at zip codes within our survey. As we know, we have about 43 zip codes represented in our school. And you can see here the number of respondents from each zip code. Our zip code where our school is located actually we received the most responses. And what you can see here is of the top vote getters, what these zip codes surrounding our school or feeding our school were primarily selecting. So you'll see our zip code where our school is located actually had the most votes for Katherine Johnson, which was one of the top three overall, and then also one of the top three when you looked at the responses from people of color. So this is just an opportunity to look at things visually. I'm a visual learner. So staff, Katherine Johnson, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks. Parents, Katherine Johnson, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks. Community, very similar. And then what we did is showed the results in visual form as well. So for Black staff and parents, you can see the results here, Katherine Johnson and Harriet Tubman. You're gonna start to see some patterns here. Latinx, staff and parents, multiracial parents, Asian staff and parents, white staff and parents. This is students. And so before we move to the LSC conversation, I just wanted to highlight a few things from the top three student nominations. So to review, really two of the top three consistently across subgroups were in the top one or two position, not just total vote received, but also for people of color. So for people of color, 25.9% voted for Katherine Johnson and 24.7% voted for Harriet Tubman. When you think of those numbers and then you dig more deeply, like I said, from not just people of color, but to Black voters or Black multiracial, you do see that that Katherine Johnson was at 25.8% and Harriet Tubman was at 24.7% again. So then when you look further from just people of color, just Black and Black multiracial, and you go to the student vote, you'll see that this is a little bit different. And the student vote was 17.4% for Harriet Tubman and 14.3% for Katherine Johnson. But both those two names consistently came to the top. So I just kind of wanted to frame the work that it wasn't just around the number of votes received, but it was digging deeper into those most impacted as we prioritized at the beginning of this process, as well as looking at what our students had given feedback on. So what I'd like to do now is open the floor for for LSC discussion. Again, the priority being that tonight we need to end up with a 1, 2, and 3 ranking. I definitely want to, again, frame the work in thinking through the initial pieces that we started with, which were through our equity lens, our CPS instructional core, our vision, mission, and graduate statements, our core values that were identified, and the 4 pillars of the work. And I want to frame that so that when we're talking about these 3 candidates, we are thinking about which candidate embodies all of those to the highest degree possible. And so it's not just a matter of looking at one result or another, but thinking through all the pieces that we've talked about. And I know that after our work is done, the equity office will also be looking at it through that lens before our final 3 end up going to the Board of Education. So I am going to stop sharing at this point and lead us into the discussion. And I will, I guess, open the floor for discussion. We did have some variance, and I think where people were coming from. So if there's anyone who wants to speak first, kind of, you know, I'm going to be taking notes in our document about who has prioritized in what orders so that we can make sure we have record of that and that we end up calculating, you know, appropriately. So if you see me
Mira, just before we start, I do want to congratulate you and your team, as well as Dr. Sweeney and the Office of Equity. This was a lot of work, and I'm sure it was hard. And we saw this stuff. We saw the work come home with the kids. We saw the kids get excited about it. We saw the kids invest. You know, I don't know how everybody feels about the names that ended up in the surfacing to the top. But as we saw the names come through and we saw kids give their opinion, you know, I'm pretty proud of the process, you know, and I think you should be too. So I just want to congratulate you, you know, and I don't know if this could have been navigated any smoother than you did it.
Well, I thank you for that. And the teachers obviously carried a large part of that, and they should be definitely commended for how they handled it and for their own professional growth and development. And I know that it wouldn't have been possible without the support of the Office of Equity in making this such a transparent process. And so we're extremely grateful to have their partnership and support, which we'll continue to have as we move forward. So is there anyone willing to be the first one to talk?
Sure. Okay. First question. First thing, you know, this is just to echo some of what Oliver was saying and what you said as well. This is new territory, and I think, you know, I want to commend, just as in the last meeting, you, Mira, the teachers as well, for having some flex in their needs and being open to learning, and because no one expects perfect execution. The important thing is learning lessons and reflecting and striving for improvement. So just want to commend everyone involved on that for sure. One question, what percentage of the student population actually participated in the survey?
Of the student population, it was
the numbers seem kind of low. I mean, of course, I wouldn't expect the little kids necessarily to, but just curious.
I'm going to go back so that I don't tell you the wrong number here.
Okay.
Of our responses, there was 384 responses, but that came from about 140 some students. So that is a smaller percentage than I thought we would see, to be honest. But they were all given opportunity during class, as well as, you know, obviously at home with parents and families if so choose. So that is definitely a learning that I think will be passed on to, you know, any other school that engages in this process, is thinking of ways to make sure that all the all students who appropriate, take the survey
Sure.
or provide their feedback on the final name.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think you raise a good point. After you sent out the raw data today and I was going through it and everything, one question I had was, about the weighting and did every group weigh the same, not from a ethnic standpoint, but staff, parent, community, student. But, thank you for addressing that. It sounds like the student voice was elevated. One thing I will say is this is definitely an opportunity to look back on the integrity of our methods, because of course your output is only as reliable as your input. And some things that I noticed when I was looking through the data, not only the lower student response than I thought there would be, but also looking at our means for distributing the survey. I know there have been some issues with who's getting Aspen emails and those who are not. And so an opportunity to take a look at the methods we're using, how well the people we are actually reaching represent the demographics of our school, and filling in holes there. Because if you look at the responses of the 1129, total responses, I think it was something like 55% from whites. And while that's only 36% of our student population, a lot of the other groups were pretty close when I did the percentages like that. But again, something to think about and reflect as we move forward in the best way to equitably get the information we need so that we can roll out practices that are equitable. Let's see what else. So just the question about after the rankings are made tonight and they go to the Office of Equity, what's the step there?
So they'll just be reviewing our rationales, looking at why we've prioritized 1, 2, or 3, which is exactly what the board will do. It's just another way of vetting before the board actually receives it. So what'll have to happen is after this meeting, the principal and the chair, so in this case, myself and Oliver, will draft kind of basically reiterating why we land wherever we land and how each name put forward was important for its various reasons, and kind of summarizing the reasons for each, and then summarizing the reason why we landed on the prioritizing that we did. That then goes to members to review. Equity will review it. The board will eventually end up getting it, and then they vote on the final selection. And so it won't be until they vote that we officially have like whatever that name will be.
Okay. And now the latter part of whatever the name ends up being, are we going to address that now, or how will we address that?
So we will need to address it now. And I think there's going to be various things that come out of that conversation too. And so just so people understand what we're saying, basically we have to decide if it's just going to be the name that's put forward, elementary school, or if it's going to be, example, Harriet Tubman, Fine and Performing Arts, or Katherine Johnson, World School of Excellence, or we have to kind of nail down what that ending will be. And that is something that we actually do need to do tonight as well. And so I think once we get the name solidified, then we should move to that part.
Okay. And just the last question, the last couple slides you had in your presentation about next steps and things like that, will we address that after we do all this?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. I didn't want to jump to that until we kind of had this conversation, but for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So Mira, were you able to see where things landed based on the LSC survey? Is that information you have to share or no?
In terms of people who shared their priority.
What's up? Yeah, I just wondered if the LSC has already picked a 1, 2, and 3.
We have not.
I mean, based on the survey that we took.
Right. No, we have not. We have, and I know it's shocking. We have varying opinions. I know it's
Really?
hard to believe.
Really?
There is not a clear cut. So not everyone, you know, felt comfortable filling that in until we had this meeting, which is totally understandable. But as a starting point, I will say that what is in common from those who did share their thoughts is that Rosa Parks was a solid third from the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 who did complete this ahead of time. Rosa Parks would have been the third option, which, you know, again, not everyone completed it. But that could be a starting point if people are okay with that.
Well, I'll say, you know, each one of these, I mean, you really can't go wrong with any of these names. And so I think that's the first thing. I think it's virtually impossible to quantify any discernible difference in their contribution to America and to Black Americans. And so it's almost criminal to ask us to say if an individual's contribution is more valuable or less valuable or more worthy or less worthy of being in the first spot, second spot, or third spot. And so I was genuinely hoping that the survey did that work for us. And so that people, it wouldn't be a matter of comparison, but more of a matter of preference. And so that we could, you know, for no particular reason, maybe the majority of the LSC thought that Katherine Johnson was the name that better represented the core values, not for any particular comparative reason, but for just a mathematical one. That's what we kind of came up with. You know, just personally, I prioritize the Harriet Tubman's name because for me, individually and personally, you know, this is someone that's been a hero my entire life. So I thought that outside of any particular comparative piece, you know, for me, that would have been the most pleasing and made me the most proud of the names that went up. But that is completely outside of Katherine Johnson and Rosa Parks' contribution. And so for me, I don't understand, you know, what the process would look like. How are we supposed to choose?
Yeah, what I can say is of the 7 who did complete it ahead of time, and I can throw myself into this one. So 8, Katherine Johnson would have been prioritized as 1 by 5 of us.
Okay.
And that still leaves members who have not spoken. And I'm happy to kind of share my rationale or thoughts. I totally understand what you're saying and agree. To have to prioritize their contributions is, you know, you can't. I mean, but I think that in looking at our data, we can look through it in that way and think about the intention of the process and the group, the people that we wanted prioritized to come to that. But I'd prefer to let some other people share before I keep talking.
I'm happy to jump in. I just want to say I'm super proud of all the work. I mean, particularly the students, the teachers, the staff, the broader school community. I mean, a lot of folks participated in the survey. It was pretty, you know, hard work, of course, but I'm really proud of both the work, but also, I mean, if you really step back and think about this in context, like we are, it is fairly remarkable that we're moving from a namesake who didn't believe that Black people had the ability for self-governance to then recommending names, particularly 2 Black women who are probably 2 of our nation's finest, like freedom fighters. That's a remarkable moment, and it really just fills me with a lot of pride that we're at this point. And you know, Harriet Tubman was actually nominated to be. She was slated to be on the $20 bill until this current administration and decided to put that on hold. So I think for me, well, I do want to give a shout out to of just like members of the school community who really, you know, were, you know, energetically sort of pushing for a name change, even 3 years ago or more, you know, in the face of being told no. they persisted, and they deserve a lot of credit. They know who they are. They deserve a lot of credit for the moment that we're in right now. So I wanted to say that too. But I think so given that Harriet Tubman, for me personally, given that students had prioritized Harriet Tubman, given that people of color in the school had also prioritized Harriet Tubman, that would be my number one choice. I didn't fill out the survey, but for me, it would be Harriet Tubman, then Katherine Johnson, and Rosa Parks.
I'm actually going to put it in there as you say that, just so I have something to look back at. Thank you.
I just want to say that I'm in awe that all this was done in a short period of time with technology. This was correct. This is all remote, right?
Yeah.
And then the fact that they chose women, maybe a lot of people saw themselves for future because of the role models that they have been introduced to and learned about.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Jackie. Anyone else want to share either their rankings or their thoughts or?
Well, I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. I put, I'm pretty sure I'm sorry, did I cut you off again? Go ahead, ladies first.
Okay, no, I was just going to say I didn't share. I had not filled out the survey because I wanted to hear the updated presentation and the questions that I had forwarded to you before the meeting. But similar to what Chirag said, disaggregating the data, not only the student voice, but just the voice of people of color, put forth Harriet Tubman. And so that she would be my first choice, and then Katherine Johnson, and then Rosa Parks. But also for Harriet Tubman, not that anyone's contributions to society were any less, but I guess I lean more towards Harriet Tubman because of her contribution and the state of the world in which she contributed. You know,
Sure.
we go from Agassiz to someone believing and spreading what he did, to someone who was in the thick of that and still had the courage and fortitude to rise above it and to bring others along. So that's why I put her first.
What I was going to say was, like I said, I prioritize Harriet Tubman as my first choice. I believe I put Rosa Parks as my second and Katherine Johnson as my third. Again, it was simply because I was asked to put them in order. I mean, for me, all three of these women are heroes and deserve to be put forth they're all my number one choice, to be honest with you. I put Harriet Tubman first just because, I mean, she is a gargantuan figure, in the African American family, in the African American community, and our ethos. She is a huge figure, and so it is. While it's unfair to compare these three women and their contributions, when we separate them and we look in a non-comparative sense, and we talk about Harriet Tubman, 13 missions, 70 plus freemen, networks of activists, the level of organization, and to Tina's point, in the time and arena that she did it in, it's unbelievable. The level of courage, the heart. I mean, this woman had a lion in her chest. It's unbelievable to me. So for me, when I look at any list of names, when I look at 100 names, Harriet Tubman's always going to be the number one for me on that list. And so this wasn't even really a contest for me. I think that all three women are excellent, but if I'm able to choose a number one choice, is definitely Harriet Tubman. I could, for my 2 and 3, I could go in either combination. I think both are spectacular. Both contributed in different ways, and again, in different times. I think that's an important point to make. And so it's very difficult to compare the two, but definitely I am the most excited about Harriet Tubman.
Thank you.
And I'll echo just what everybody has said so far, in congratulating and commending you for this process, between yourself, Mira, as well as the teachers, the Office of Equity. I think it really was a lot to put together in a very short time, and prioritizing student voice was really powerful, I think, for the students as well as just the school community to see this in action. In my rankings, I agree with Oliver completely with trying to rank order these individuals who were just all incredible human beings. That it's something that I just can't do because I can't just in myself quantify that. So I looked really just at the numbers, which was similar to how you described. And looking at the data, what I came up with, if looking at combining totals for people who identify as Black or Black multiracial, it did seem that Katherine Johnson received more votes, or than with Harriet Tubman, a very, very narrow second, and then Rosa Parks. And that seemed consistent across other racial identities. It did seem like it shifted, which I thought was really interesting, I think, within the students, where it did seem students, especially students of color, were more prone toward Harriet Tubman. And just given, I know in the presentations that were sent out that were made by the students, there were 2 different slides for Katherine Johnson. So I'm assuming 2 different full classes put together those slides, where I only saw 1 for Harriet Tubman. So it was just interesting that in the actual voting process, what resonated with most of the students then, and students of color, was Harriet Tubman. But then I'm trying to also integrate the voices of all other racial identities and I think roles within the school community. It was overwhelmingly, not overwhelmingly, but it was by a narrow margin consistently Katherine Johnson. So I went more just straight out by the numbers, trying to keep in mind the differences for the groups that have been most harmed by her current name.
And I agree with what Carrie said. I looked at it kind of the same way that Carrie did, and looking at the numbers and looking at the breakdown by race as well. And it just seemed that in a lot of those categories, Katherine Johnson was a slightly higher. But I also went with a conversation that both classrooms, 5th grade classrooms, had, that we kind of just sat back and let happen. But they had a lot of debate, and there was about when they were choosing their name, but also when they were going through the names. And we were like, hey, you guys, this isn't necessarily a time to share your opinion about each name, because everybody's going to have their own opinion. We just wanted to share the names with you guys, and but they debated a bit. But during our initial discussions, they were really passionate about having a name that wasn't as recognizable as some of the others, because in their words, they were like, well, a lot of people know who Harriet Tubman or Rosa Parks is. And they weren't talking about Katherine Johnson at that time, but they were talking about someone, and I'm trying to remember who it was. But they were talking about that they didn't know that person, and they felt it was good that they could actually teach other people about that person. Once they knew more about that person, they would be able to inform people and make that person's name kind of jump out in history too, as well as the other people who were a little bit more famous. And I just kind of put that logic with these 3 names too, and was kind of like, again, they were all had great contributions and all worthy. But I kind of looked at the numbers and I kind of went with that, thinking of the students.
Thanks, Dave. Anyone else?
I was just going to say, I think I echo what a lot of council members have said already. it is unfair to have to compare them, but that is what we're doing tonight. And I would be happy with any of these names on the school that I teach at. My ranking, I believe, was similar to Dave's and Carrie's from what I can hear them say. I did go with Catherine Johnson first for kind of a combination of what Dave and Carrie said. I kind of looked at the whole, looking at across the races, across staff, students, parents, and Catherine Johnson did seem to be, just like Carrie said, just a tiny bit ahead, although it is not a competition. I do wonder, it is interesting with the there were two classrooms did Catherine Johnson and the one that did Harriet Tubman, but that the students went more for Harriet Tubman. And it could be, like Dave said, like, is it, it's easier to pick the one that the name you recognize, maybe the more familiar name is maybe something, students did, or, who knows, but I would be happy with any of them, any of these names on our school.
Thanks, Nick. Anyone else want to share Michael?
I also totally agree. I had a hard time ranking them in order. I think that Catherine Johnson's really interesting because of her academic background, and the fact that she was a mathematician makes a lot of sense for a school. But I ranked them Tubman, Johnson, Parks because the students picked Harriet Tubman, and I thought they should have a significant weigh-in. So that's why I ranked them that way.
Thanks, Michael. Marilyn, did you want to talk, or?
Yeah, I ranked them high. I ranked Tubman first. It was a little difficult for me, but I was also going with the numbers of the students and the staff and the community as well. But Tubman really hit it for me. So that's how I went. Yeah.
Thanks. So I got everyone right. That just me left. Yeah. So much like all of you, the top two were Catherine Johnson and Harriet Tubman. And really, I did end up putting Catherine Johnson first, and here's why. Because I looked very closely at the people of color who, it was, again, a very small percentage, but it was a higher percentage for Johnson. And then specifically to our Black voters, it was a higher percentage for Johnson. And while our process is heavily student driven and we want to prioritize students, I did also feel that as a community and coming together and thinking about everyone, that in thinking about everyone and all of the people of color in our school community who voted, that it could be a unifying decision. Also, much like Michael said, the idea of Catherine Johnson being kind of an educator and in that field, and the barriers that she broke as a woman of color, and in particular to an institution where we educate. And in addition to that, the work that she did as kind of a juxtaposition to the work that Louis J. Agassiz did, I found to be something that stood out to me in terms of the fields they were in and the polar opposite, beliefs and persistence that Catherine Johnson showed. I also think when I was reflecting on our 4 pillars and on the values, as well as the connection to our vision, mission, and graduate statements, specifically to the IB work and to the connection of changing, not just changing, but to the connection of the transdisciplinary work and the well-rounded kind of educational philosophy that stood out to me as well. But again, much like you all have said, a very close first and second, and the data, was also was also very close. But to me, Katherine Johnson just was, I guess, a more round picture. And I also thought a lot about Harriet Tubman and Rosa Parks being very well-known names, and Katherine Johnson, and the idea that our students came up with this name that, you know, really took work and effort and isn't someone that they're taught about necessarily every year as Harriet Tubman and Rosa Parks have been. And so to take advantage of that opportunity of someone new that we could highlight and put forward. So that was kind of my thought process.
Mary, can you say a little bit more about what you mean by Katherine Johnson being a unifying name? Unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, so the people of color, just the higher percentage was of Katherine Johnson. I get that it shifted a little bit with students, but overall, and again, all of these were slight percentages, but unifying in that she did capture the higher percentage of people of color across demographics, not just looking at the students, of course, but the multiple demographics that we had. So I guess here's, and so unless there's other questions, we do have 5 and 5. So we have 5 Harriet Tubman first and 5 Katherine Johnson first, which is just so fitting. So to move that conversation forward, are there any ideas on how we do that?
I mean,
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Has anyone changed their mind after hearing all of the different methods that everyone has gone through to come up with choices? Has that changed anyone's individual ranking, I guess?
I guess, like I said, I originally thought of, I think a lot of people who said Tubman first said Tubman, Tubman, Johnson, Parks. I could align under that and say Tubman, Johnson, Parks, but and to have the 5 a little more unified. But I do think when I think about, I understand what everyone is saying about, you know, a name being popular or a name being known, but I would argue that there's a reason for that. I would argue that there's a reason that, you know, Harriet Tubman's name, and that reason is because of the Herculean feat that it was to do what she did. And like I said, this is not about taking away from anybody. You know, this is about looking in people in their own grace and their own contribution. You know, I am proudly and excitedly making her my #1 choice, because when I think about, you know, the beatings and you know, the traumatic head injuries that she took, you know, and despite the pain she went through, she went back 13 times. You know, there was no stopping her. And when I think about that determination and that courage, no matter what our kids are up against, no matter whether it's their scholastic endeavors or their work endeavors or their social endeavors, it is that courage, that wherewithal, that ability to endure that is going to get them through it. And that sense of Harriet Tubman is what I've always leaned on when I thought about her. And it wasn't just the fact that she made these 13 trips where she saved 70 people, or she's considered the Black Moses, or any of these things. It's that she dealt with both emotional, physical, and psychological pain, but she put others first. And I think that when we think about what we are as a school, that is what we're trying to teach our kids to be. And I think that it speaks a little bit louder than you know, the associations or the juxtapositions.
You know, Oliver, I would agree with you and would like to add a couple things. You know, when we look at the data from people of color, and we have Black multiracial, you know, it's further broken down. When you look at it at the level that it's actually broken down to, Harriet Tubman does have more, a higher percentage and more number of the votes from the people from all those categories of people of color. So I will say that because both Latinx, Hispanic, and what was the other group? Latinx,
Black multiracial.
just want to get it right.
Asian.
Yes, Latinx multicultural. Both settled on Harriet Tubman. And also, I want to add that, again, while Katherine Johnson, Rosa Parks, those contributions cannot be diminished, but in this country, the legacy that slavery has been discussed in hushed tones, if at all, not appropriately taught in schools. And a lot of times I think it's because of the discomfort of facing the ugliness of it. And I think it's time for a culture shift with how we look at that. You know, it's not an ugly shame for people of color to bear. It's an ugly shame for this country. And I think those who rose above it merit celebrating. And I think it's time to stop watering down our facing and accepting of that part of our history and doing anti-racist work and action to move the conversation forward and to make it everyone's responsibility, not just what Black people have to deal with.
That's super powerful to me. I would add too, I just think that Harriet Tubman was not just a freedom fighter for Black people. She was a freedom fighter for all people. That what she had a vision for the country that was really kind of a polar opposite to Agassiz, and that all people really were equal. And she was fighting for a country where that actually was the aspiration. And so when I think of like a unifying person, I mean, again, as everybody here has said, I mean, all the names are good names, but you know, for me, it's Tubman, and then also Rosa Parks, but Tubman, who really elevates a vision for the country and for people that is a reflection of where we want to go, and is a wonderful choice given who our namesake was.
Can we go back? I'm just two things, sorry. And I appreciate everything that's been said because it's good to hear things in different perspectives and to understand where everybody is coming from. I'm just curious for one, the numbers. Am I looking at the numbers differently than Tina? In my looking, and I don't know, I'm looking at that slide 10, 11 and 12 and comparing the two. And
Hold on, I'm in present mode, so I don't know which. Hold on, 1, 2.
And maybe I'm just looking at it wrong. So I just want to clarify that. Then the other thing, I'm just wondering if we want to do something where I don't want to put pressure on, I mean, this is a huge decision. And so the people that didn't necessarily, who are going to sway the thing, like, I just don't want it to be on one person. If there's some way we can re-vote or do whatever so that it doesn't fall on one person, or one person doesn't feel like, oh gosh, I have to make this decision and it's going to stand for a long time. I don't want to have anybody in that position.
So I'm just looking at the ratings from the council members, the document that Amir shared with us. And if we want to go just by the numbers, could we do, looking at for Harriet Tubman and Katherine Johnson, both first and second positions, and see who comes out on top? Does that make sense? Since they're tied in first, if we look at their second positions, so who has the most second versus third positions? Do we have someone, is it still a tie? Amira, do you see that? Like they all have, there's 5 first positions for each. And then I'm looking at Katherine Johnson has 3 second positions, 2 third. Harriet Tubman has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 second positions. So mathematically, if you're looking at both first and second position, Harriet Tubman would come out ahead. So if, that way that does avoid anyone having, like, it's not dependent on one person changing their vote, because I think like we have to value the fact that everyone put a lot of thought into this and has very valid opinions. So if we go just strictly by the numbers, it would look like Harriet Tubman would be the first choice overall.
And it sounds like Rosa Parks is the clear third. It seems like everyone is vying for Katherine Johnson
and I think
Mm-hmm.
So I think
But did anybody look at the numbers? And thank you, Nick, because I like that better.
Yeah, I like that too.
I may have read, hold on. I'm going back to what I said. I mean, I don't know that I want to contradict you, Dave. So I'm sorry if I'm
Please do, because I might be looking at it completely wrong. I'm guessing I am.
I think if we go back to the intention of and I appreciate everyone sharing kind of your talking points and thoughts. And I think that for me, as we hear the thoughts and as we see that, so many are close on the 1 and the 2, or the 2 names, Katherine Johnson and Harriet Tubman, if we revisit the intention, which was to lift those most impacted, but specifically to drill down to our students, then I think for me, Harriet Tubman, because of the students, would be the inclination for number 1. So I think what I'm saying is, I think when we go back to the intention of it being a student-led inquiry, and we think about the mission of having students drive the work, and then we think further about specifically the students and people of color, that I would put Harriet Tubman as number 1 then, after kind of thinking through and having these conversations. I don't know what that would end up doing for us overall, but I think that I think that makes sense. I think it could go either way, but when you come down to the students is, for me, what we always said would be at the forefront of this. So I think that makes sense.
I am happy with going with whatever the majority of the council ranks as 1 and 2 and 3. It does seem like Rosa Parks is pretty solid in the 3rd, or in the as being listed as the 3rd name. It sounds like right now.
It was wrong to say, right?
What's it?
It hurts to say it, doesn't it?
It does. There's really, I can't find a good way to say it. I hope there's one, but I can't find it.
Feels dirty.
It does. But it sounds like right now, in terms of rankings, there's 6 council members who have put Harriet Tubman 1, 5 that have put Katherine Johnson 1. I'm personally fine with going with 4 that put Katherine Johnson 1. I am fine going with the majority with if the majority, if 6 out of 10 say that Harriet Tubman should be ranked first or believe strongly that that would be the order, that sounds like a fair way to proceed, and I'm happy to motion on that.
So we're saying Tubman, Johnson, Parks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you want to put that into a motion, I guess we can discuss it on the inside if you want.
I motion that we submit the following names in this order: Harriet Tubman, Katherine Johnson, Rosa Parks.
I second.
Yeah, so it's been seconded. Motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion? I think we've had a lot. If someone wants to, before we take it to a vote, does anyone want to add anything before we vote on that?
I do.
Right, so
I just want to say, oh no, sorry, it doesn't impact the vote. So go ahead and close the vote, and then
okay. So motions on the floor, ranked in this order for the names: Tubman, Johnson, Parks. Motion has been seconded. All in favor? Mira, can you count?
Yeah.
Is this vote only for the LSC members?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm coming as a parent.
Yes.
Yeah, it's only for
okay.
LSC.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10. Unanimous.
All right. Thanks, guys. I think that was great discussion.
That was
Mary,
awesome.
you want to talk about the back part?
Well, what I first wanted to say was that I'm appreciative of a very respectful and thoughtful conversation, and that in the end, what we've decided is most certainly uplifted our student voice, and specifically of those most impacted. And I think that the reflection and having the respectful conversation led us to a point that feels good for everybody. And I'm just really excited and glad that we could have a discussion that I know, or I anticipated being very hard. So I appreciate that. The next piece of this is to figure out the ending of the name, or the extension of the name. So if it's Harriet Tubman, anyone have any ideas on elementary school or world school?
Was IB able to be in there? IB World School?
I don't know that we'd put IB, but world school. I mean, IB, I don't know that we could put IB until we're fully authorized, which is not for PYP. So I'd be a little hesitant of jumping on IB, but world school certainly could be stated. I've heard people talk about something in particular to the arts. I don't know if anyone has like a thought they want to throw out, or somewhere where we want to start.
There's a lot of emphasis on academics.
And Mira, I know that it got brought up with staff asking about the tag of fine and performing arts. Do we have to stick with that? Is it an option? Is it always tagged to?
And is there a consequence if we change it?
There's no consequence.
Financial, yeah.
I mean, whatever we pick, it could always say fine and performing arts after, which is kind of what happened, to our current name, is that it was just kind of tagged on to the bottom, or not the bottom. I don't want it to sound like that, but at the end. So it could certainly just remain that way, that it's Harriet Tubman blank fine and performing arts magnet cluster, which is kind of how it's phrased now.
And I wanted to just say, so I'm both on the World School and obviously the Fine and Performing Arts, but I was actually thinking about it. So we've been a Fine and Performing Arts magnet cluster school for 22 years now, I believe, 23, I think. But our name has always been Agassiz Elementary School. Like the official name is elementary school, and then we are known as a Fine and Performing Arts school. As far as financially, the magnet cluster name, it doesn't go with the actual name. It's just a qualification we get as long as we are a magnet cluster school. So financially, keeping it elementary, which is what it's always been, is fine. I would go towards World School, only because, so World School, if you look around CPS, a lot of the IB schools, so like looking at Pierce, I think is like World School of International Studies. So a lot of IB schools are going towards the World School nomenclature. And I'm just thinking of our staff that for now 3, 7, 8 years have been working towards being a wall-to-wall IB school. I do think the World School part is, important to staff, to the students. It really is what we are working towards. And it won't take away, I don't think, from fine and performing arts. Like I said, we've always been just elementary, but people know us for our arts. And I don't think that's going to change just because the name arts isn't in our school. So I would go for Harriet Tubman World School would be my suggestion.
I appreciate
That was my question. Like, because of the magnet cluster, I don't want us to lose teachers or anything like that. And so as long as that's taken care of, I agree completely with Nick with the World School.
Yeah, I do too.
And-
I just was going to take it one step further. And I think it was important to hear from Nick just as the arts kind of leader.
Absolutely.
And full disclosure, the position that the magnet cluster pays for is my position.
I know, that's why I asked.
Yes. So
That's why I asked.
100% sure there are no financial ramifications to not having the word arts in our school.
Good. Okay. I was trying to like hide it in there.
Yeah. I would just say the only piece I was going to add to that, Nick, because I do like the idea of World School. I think it hits on our diversity. It hits on the International Baccalaureate picture, us being global minded. The piece that I think, my personal opinion, we don't have to do it, but that would then separate us from just being a world school is, I personally think World School of Excellence makes a lot of sense. I think that when you think of excellence, you can think about it in terms of arts, academics, and athletics. It wraps up kind of the well-rounded picture of who we are. So I would say World School of Excellence, but totally open to hearing other ideas.
Yeah, I like both of those ideas. I think that I don't like it. I like 3 words. For some reason, World School just kind of falls flat. I feel like there needs to be something else there for some reason, and I don't know why, but and I like World School of Excellence because it's not specific to anything, and it's something for us to strive for in all areas versus just one area. Or, but I also especially like it just for the IB tie-in.
It's excellence is an attribute of the people. You know what I mean? It's describing what we're working towards all the time. And so I agree. I think that would be great.
Anyone else have thoughts on this piece? Then can I motion that we would be the Harriet Tubman World School of Excellence?
That's awesome. I'll second it.
Second.
All right, motion has been seconded. That's pretty exciting, right? The motion has been seconded to present as our number 1 name as the Harriet Tubman World School of Excellence. Is there any additional discussion on that?
I'm just wondering, just for clarity's sake, should we motion on the second half separately? So like, no matter what, because our first pick is Harriet Tubman, but it is up to the board. I'm assuming they can pick from the 3, right? So
Oh, I see. So we want
with
World
this
School of
vote,
Excellence.
with this vote, we're tied to Harriet Tubman School of Excellence. But what happens if it's not Harriet? Does that make sense? So I don't know if we should. Is that supposed to be?
I thought we were going to put that on all of them.
Yeah, but I
thought
think
we were submitting with all of
I
them.
think what Nick is saying is that if we motion it and vote on it separately, then whatever comes back as the board's decision, we would have voted that we want World School of Excellence on any of them.
Is that not what we're saying?
Well, I think because of the way I motioned it, it's not clear. So I guess I'm gonna redact my motion. Can I do that?
No, you have to amend it.
I'm amending my motion to say we are the World School of Excellence will come after the name itself.
Correct. I will second that motion and second the amendment to that motion. And so the amended motion is that we choose World School of Excellence as the second part of our school name. Any confusion, or everybody good with that?
Just to be clear, so when we submit the names would be submitted as following in the following order: Harriet Tubman, World School of Excellence; Katherine Johnson, World School of Excellence; Rosa Parks, World School of Excellence.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. All in favor by show of hands? Yeses?
Unanimous. 10.
Beautiful.
Yay.
Yay. We did it.
We did it. Thank you to everyone.
Wow. All right. Let's move to the next item of the agenda, which is certifying the LSC election results.
No, I still have to present on reopening.
Oh, I forgot you had to be on here.
Sorry.
No, you also have the other slides for the rest.
I'm going to go back to those, finish this, and then we have the, I'm going back to the end of the slideshow, and then we have reopening. So, okay, hold on. And now I have to go back on my
Totally confused. I don't know what happened.
Okay. So, share screen. Find the right deck. Here we go. Okay, so we discussed. And now kind of just want to refocus us back on the fact that the renaming of our school was the short-term work, and the long-term work which is where we really will have an impact in terms of changing beliefs and practices. This slide here is something that I have had in multiple presentations, but it is the one about thinking through how we ask ourselves different questions to help us examine our beliefs and practices. And the hope being that as we come at our work from an equity standpoint and we ask these questions of ourselves, they will help us in executing the review of our actual school-based practices and procedures. So as we examine our beliefs and practices, the next stage of that would be to review and revise different pieces of our school currently, and then also to work toward the establishment of additional pieces. So to review, after we've done this reflection, we do have a CIWP meeting coming up in a couple of weeks where we will update that plan to include an equity priority. As stated at the beginning of this renaming process, going back to the vision, mission, and graduate statements to make sure that they're reflective of the values that we've identified and the school name that we will embody. To look at our school procedures and practices, looking at our grading systems, a culturally relevant curriculum, and scope and sequence across grade levels and programs from PYP to MYP. And then really to establish a true liberatory thinking across our staff and community, for talking about the expectations on how we discuss and teach and lead around real world issues for our students and amongst adults. A collective engagement to enhance or uplift the equity stance. And again, in terms of our parental involvement, ensuring that there is equity in that arm of what we do as well. So the work doesn't end here. The work is far from over. I've always said this was the short term. It was the goal that we could see, that we set at the beginning, but the true work is yet to come. And like I said, we have a meeting for CIWP in 2 weeks where we will start thinking through that equity priority, and then that would get presented, to the new LSC to be approved as part of our new CIW, or to be part of an amended CIWP. So are there any questions, I'm sorry, on these last pieces before I move into reopening?
You know, Mayor, I just want a clarification regarding the questions that you had on the previous slide, those questions for reflection and how we look at our beliefs and practices, and then the CIWP piece. I'm just wondering, I think at the November regular meeting, we talked about the equity piece being brought into the CIWP, kind of driving to these questions. Mm-hmm. But now it kind of sounds like the outcomes of some of these questions, as far as examining our beliefs and practices, will be baked into action items in the CIWP. So just wondering, like, which way the traffic flows there.
Yeah, no, good question. I think it's really both. I don't think there's one or the other. I mean, I think we have to discuss these conversations in order to craft a CIWP to know where we are. But I think one of the action items in the CIWP is to have these conversations. So I kind of see them as not interchangeable, but some may come before the others, but all of it needs to be part of the CIWP. I mean, some of these conversations have started through the renaming work, but there's obviously a lot to be done. So I see it as these conversations being in the CIWP, but also as we talk through that, what are the action items that we then think are most important as we talk through that? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, thank you. And just one other thing, where you have scope and sequence updates across grade levels and program.
Yep.
What are you referring to there?
So as we look at making sure that our curriculum is culturally relevant, that we are aligning that across grade levels. So if we're teaching something specific in one grade, that we're feeding into that grade appropriately, or that grade is preparing for the next grade. As we talk about, culturally relevant terms that we want students to know, and that we want to be discussing, where does that fall, in what grade level, and how do we build off of that in the next grade level?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I will put the entirety of this deck on the website also. Are there any other questions right now, though? Okay, then I am going to stop sharing this one and switch to reopening. Okay. Here we go. All right, so as we've all heard, CPS is planning a return to school, a return at different points for pre-K versus pre-K through 8th grade. So I'm going to kind of review the information that we have on the different models available, and I will walk through some of the details that we currently know, as well as highlight some of the things that we don't yet know that will be forthcoming. And I'm also will hit on some of the questions that people have already asked until this point. So our preschool, which is a half-day preschool, will remain half-day. The difference between the K through 8 model for the return is that preschool will start earlier, come back sooner, but also preschool is a 5-day option. So our preschoolers will come for 2.5 hours, 5 days a week, and then before the PM session comes, will be a deep cleaning of the classroom, and then the PM session would come 5 days a week as well. So for pre-K, it's either virtual 5 days or in-person 5 days. Again, and they would be in pods, no more than 15 students in the AM, no more than 15 in the PM. And then you can see here what it would look like if you're learning at home, the minutes versus compared to the 2.5 hours of in-person if you are at the school. For our K through 8th grade students, the return would be a hybrid model where you would come 2 days a week in person, which is a full school day. Everyone would be learning remotely on Wednesdays, You can see the breakdown of the minutes there. And then 2 days a week, you would be learning at home, while the other pod or other shift is in person. So what does that look like for students who learn virtually 5 days a week? You can see here that really the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday look the same. Wednesday, again, is remote learning for everyone, and that's an opportunity for students who are in person as well as students who are remote to maintain a sense of community and have classes together. So there is a shared day. So a lot of questions about how we've been preparing with what we have so far. And I'm going to just walk through a couple high level pieces here. So a lot of our procedures will change with the hybrid return. Prior to student arrival, there are things that families will need to do to make sure students are ready, to ensure their face coverings are on prior to coming onto the playground, making sure students come with devices fully charged. Students will not be sharing devices. And completing the daily health screener, which is linked to this presentation and will be posted, that you can get online, or you will get as parents a text message or an email. Our entry and dismissals will also look different to keep socially distanced, but also to make sure students will have an assigned door that they will come in and they will leave through that same door. So there will be changes to our arrival and dismissal. Again, morning routines. Once you've done your daily screener, your student comes to school, we will be checking temperatures and all students will be washing hands. In our bathrooms, the stalls every other stall has been closed to ensure distancing, and there are no electric dryers. It is all paper towels. Similarly, in our hallways, the water bottle will be functioning, but the actual water fountain, you will not be able to drink from. All the hallways, classrooms, things have markers so that we're socially distanced. We can direct traffic up and down stairs, things of that nature. Recess, we will not be using the playground equipment. Each classroom would have a bag or some way of carrying out designated recess equipment that then would be cleaned down for that specific classroom. All classrooms will have daily deep cleaning. They have hand sanitizers in them, and the furniture arrangements will change. There will be no rugs in classrooms, and we will be going through to make sure that our classrooms are as clutter-free as possible and that furniture allows us to move within the flow of traffic and remain socially distant. We will have a care room for anyone who exhibits symptoms of being sick. And then you can check out the ventilation and air quality report that I did talk about during our last LSC meeting, which we did pass. And CPS is also installing or putting HEPA filters in the classrooms. And then in terms of technology, again, charging them every night and making sure that they are brought to school every day so that we are not sharing devices. A couple of things that will remain the same as we return in person. Attendance and grading. Attendance will still be taken during 7:45. It will still be taken in Aspen, and our grading categories and weights will still remain the same. In terms of scheduling, there will be changes. We know synchronous and asynchronous learning very well, and we're very familiar with those terms now. There is a new term, simultaneous instruction, which is where the teacher who is in the classroom, it can look different, but the teacher who is teaching in person can either be also in front of the camera so that students at home are seeing that live instruction at the same time that it's happening. It could be that while students are in the classroom in person doing small work, that the teacher is providing synchronous learning for the students who are at home. So there's very different models. That is one of the pieces that we will be thinking through and working out as teacher teams. In terms of specials, it does mean that specials will be in the gen ed classroom, again, to limit flow of traffic in the hallway and just the changing of environments. And it will mean that specials can see no more than 10 pods at a time, which is basically 2.5 grades. And so those could be done in either 5-week periods or by quarter. Whoa, what happened there? Sorry. So in terms of keeping everyone safe, these are pieces that CPS has put into place: the face coverings, the pods that we spoke about, the daily screeners, the social distancing, and the increased sanitizing stations, and the increased time for hand washing and all of those procedures. In addition, this is something that's come up a lot, and people have asked about contract tracing. So the screeners are critical to that piece, as well as being transparent and reporting any cases that are known as a positive for COVID-19. CPS's Office of Student Health and Wellness will be the ones conducting the contract tracing, but it will be in conjunction with the data that we are getting through those screeners and the reporting of any positive tests. And then again, they will determine from there who quarantines or for how long and things of that nature. So this is new. There will be testing protocols that are coming, and CPS is collaborating with the Chicago Department of Public Health on surveillance testing for asymptomatic individuals, as well as school-based testing for staff members on a regular basis. And that information is forthcoming, but is being developed currently. So highlights of key decisions that need to be made. You can find these dates here. All of this was in that email that you received, or should have received as parents, for you to kind of keep in your mind as you make an informed decision. The first big deadline is December 7th, which is when the opt-in forms are due. So as parents, you select if you want your student to be in a hybrid model or fully virtual. If you did not get that email, and a couple people have not, we can input that for you. So if you are in a situation where you have not received that form, please email myself, Ms. McNally, and Ms. Caro, and all those emails I'll be putting up in a minute. And we can help you make those determinations, or at least submit it for you once you've made your determination. I'm sorry. And then you'll see here other key dates of when students return. For pre-K, that's January 11th. For K through 8, that would be February 1st. And the different markers along the way of when class assignments would be shared and schedules, as well as in-person days. So for a hybrid model, what I will say is we would keep families together. It would never be that one kid would come, Monday, Tuesday, and another would come Thursday, Friday. We will be ensuring that families remain together. And you may ask why. You'll find out about class assignments because your students are already in homerooms. But depending on numbers and how things play out, class assignments may potentially look different, so that one teacher could be doing remote and one's doing in person, or depending on, grade levels, if there's more in one grade level that come back than another, and things of that nature. So there's still a lot to come. I know there's a lot of information, and I know there's a lot of concern and hesitation in terms of how do you make those decisions. So this is a high-level overview of what we know now. It is, some of the questions that I've been getting have been answered in this deck. I know there's going to be more. I encourage people to email me their questions. I am building out an FAQ similar to how we did last time that will live on our website so that you can always see updated information. And this presentation will also be linked there. And then these are just contact pieces that I will also place on the website, but who to go to for what. And you'll see the device and supply pickup. Mr. Harris has really taken that piece over for Ms. McNally and I, and Mr. Laughlin is the device troubleshooting guru for anyone who needs help with devices. So I am going to stop presenting, and if there are questions from LSC members at this time, I'd be happy to answer what I can.
Thank you for presenting with the information that you do have now. I think that was really informative to at least kind of share a foundation for what to expect for all of the different options. I do have a few questions. I don't know if you're going to have answers at this time or not. But in terms of eating or drinking, would that be in the classroom still? And would all people in the pod be eating and drinking at the same time?
Yes, good question. That will be still in the classroom, and that would be an opportunity or a chance or a time where students would be able to remove their mask while they eat or drink. They would stay in their pod, very similar to how we've done in the past. Lunch would be brought up to the classroom.
Okay. And then do you know how often the bathrooms would be cleaned?
So there'll be I'm going to, hold on. I'm going to also open another deck here that I have so I can double check that I'm telling you correctly, but they will be checked throughout the day and then deep cleaned every evening.
Okay. And just, I'm not sure of what the situation is within the bathrooms. Do they have toilet seats that can close when they're flushed? Or is it just an open seat?
Geez, you know how long it's been since
I know.
I believe the female restroom does. Oh gosh. You know what? I don't think it does actually. I'm going to have to check, Carrie. I don't remember.
Okay. I appreciate that.
I know the third floor boys does not.
Right. Boys does not. I don't remember if the female restroom does or not.
Are there additional maintenance staff being hired to take care of all this cleaning?
So throughout the district, there's 400 additional custodial staff being hired. I can't speak specifically to what that will mean for us yet.
Mira, I hate to ask this to put you on the spot, but do you think you might have another meeting prior to coming back for parents and
yes, for sure,
like you did before?
Yeah, we absolutely will have another session. I think once we know more about our numbers in particular, and because that will help us gauge scheduling and how we're going to actually do things at a school-based level, and then we would have for sure a meeting to review all of that. And again, the January 6th LSC meeting, I will provide updated information as to what I have at that point.
I have a couple of questions, Mira. Have you been communicated any like immediate response type protocol, like say a student gets sick there at school during the day, what action will be taken immediately with the kids that are there and have been exposed to that sick child?
Other than, so the student who is exhibiting symptoms would be moved to the care room. And then I would be in touch with the Office of Student Health and Wellness. I believe until that student is tested and is found either positive or negative, that they would guide me in the interim, but they would for sure make a determination once we had a test result of some kind. But I would definitely be calling them to make sure that whatever immediate response is needed is based on what they as the professionals in kind of that field would be telling me.
Okay, because I'm sure you probably know the window around, symptom development, positivity test, depending on the type of test, of course, that could impact, what you do with the kids while you're waiting on a test result. I'm just wondering about that question. Also, does the community positivity rate impact at all the flex in this plan or the decision to move forward with it, or are they making the decisions of CPS in a vacuum? It doesn't really, because of course right now things are crazy. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of hard to imagine some kids being in school with the way things are right now. So just wondering if they are looking at that as consideration.
So, and I'm trying to remember where I saw this. I know they're making decisions in conjunction with the City of Department of Public Health. I believe I saw, and this was not in anything, I don't have anywhere specific to point to this, but I believe there was a doubling rate I read somewhere within 18 days, but that was not an official document. So I don't know for sure that is like an accurate statement. It is not in any of the official documentation that I've gotten so far, but I do know that the decisions are being made in conjunction with the Chicago Department of Public Health. And again, we know all of this is also, the union is obviously a large part of all of the decisions around staffing and teaching and staff that would return as well.
Now, lastly, will there be, well, actually two things last. The teachers, will they be switching rooms or no?
Students would stay in the rooms and teachers would switch rooms, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And will there be any guidance provided for families who perhaps travel during this time or, things like that?
Like prior to returning and then once we are returning, is that?
Well,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would, again, I'm going to say that I would assume there would be guidance given around what you need to do, similar to the travel orders that the mayor has very publicly put out. I would assume that all of those things would remain in place for CPS. But it's a good question for me to ask about communications regarding that, and I don't know the answer.
And do you have any sense of how long one's decision has to stand? Like if you choose remote or in person, can you move between that, or what's the rule there? I know there was pretty clear guidelines before.
Yeah, my understanding is that if you select a hybrid model, you may change that once you've made. So let's say you select hybrid by December 7th, but then January 29th comes and you're like, no, I'm not doing that. You can switch. But the one thing you can't do is then go between the two. Like if you switch, then you switch for at least that quarter. If you select remote learning to begin with, then it's till the end of that quarter where you would then be able to make an updated choice at the end of third quarter for fourth quarter.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
You probably covered this and I missed it, but just for the teachers in the classroom, are there going to be shields? What are the protections for teachers in the classroom?
So masks for sure. I do believe that we will have staff who choose to also have a face shield, but masks are an absolute, a face covering. In terms of staff, like when you enter the building or in the main office, there are the plastic wall, I don't want to say wall dividers, but space between where anyone would approach the area. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at my screen to make sure I'm saying everything appropriately. So I'm looking at my other screen. Yeah, so in terms of students themselves, sneeze guards, that's what I was looking for, sorry. I couldn't think of the word. So staff, it does say will be provided with face shields and masks, which we already have, so.
Mayor, for the, I think you called it the safe room, the care room, how are symptoms defined? And what we've learned on television is COVID can show itself in so many different ways, and with it being flu season, or at least on the back end of flu season, there's going to be a lot of runny noses, a lot of sniffling, a lot of hot chews. How are we, if a kid asks for a tissue, is he going to the care room, or how does that work?
I mean, I don't have a clear-cut answer for you. I'm writing this down.
And is there like a 3-strike you're out?
Anyone has a fever, that's an immediate.
Okay.
Beyond that, I totally understand your question and the point of like, is it every time something happens? I don't have like a clear-cut definitive on what that guideline will be.
Yeah, and are we telling parents that if your kid has even flu symptoms, you should keep them home? And if you do, does that count against our attendance as a school and attendance for the student?
So yes, absolutely. Anyone who's exhibiting any symptoms should be staying home. That will be a first.
Flu or otherwise, right? Pink eye, any other.
Yep, flu or otherwise. In terms of counting against attendance, I mean, they're not doing an SQRP of any kind, so I can't,
It's automatic.
not imagine that in any case attendance would be counting against us.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Any other questions from LSC members? Okay. So,
we're moving on.
yeah.
Okay. Do you want to take number 7 or this is all new? This is, we haven't really done this before.
I'm trying to open my agenda now because I stopped sharing my slides. Sorry, hold on.
Yeah.
Number 7, certification of LSC election results. Okay, so yes, I will review the election results. I can actually share my screen. There we go. So here are our election results from the November 18th election, which was all the ballots and votes were tabulated on yesterday, Tuesday, December 1st. Here are the outcomes from our parent, teacher, community, and non-teacher representatives. You can see the name of the representative as well as the number of votes beside them. And so our parent reps would be Tina Holder King, Sarah Ogetto, Kirsten Clay, Lori Viette, Kathleen Laszlo, Cindy Watola. Our community reps, Mac Laboon and Sandra Richmond. Our teacher reps, Nicholas Hall and Emily Holbert. And our non-teacher staff representative, Marilyn Rosario Caro. So I guess symbolically, we vote to certify the election. We've never done it.
You just put it in a motion.
I motion to certify the election results.
I have a question.
Sure.
Well, first an observation that it pays to be a poll watcher, because Tina got 120 votes. I'd like to know how many people actually voted.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there because that sends the wrong message. My number of votes had nothing to do with me being a poll watcher. I know you didn't mean any harm, but I need to clarify that.
But I was number 26 and my husband was number 27, about 1:30 in the afternoon. So I'd be interested in knowing the total number of voters who came in to vote. And then why are there not all the candidates listed? Because there's a couple of people I voted for, their name is not on the results.
Oh, this is just the certification. So all the candidates are not listed on this document. These are the ones that received the votes to solidify their role on the LSC.
Which means, like, for the community rep, the person that I voted for received either my one vote or my ballot was invalid?
No, it would just mean that that person would have received less than 20 votes, which is what Sandra Richmond had 20. So that individual would have received less than 20 votes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second for this motion?
I second.
Motion has been seconded. The motion is to certify the election results. Is there any further discussions or questions around the election results?
I didn't get an answer. How many total votes or voters?
Carrie, you know what? I honestly don't have that, or not Carrie, Jackie, I don't have that at my disposal right now. I believe it was just above 150.
Okay, thank you.
Of total voters?
I believe so.
Mail-in and otherwise?
I believe so. I
Yes,
don't.
I think it was 153 or 154.
And who did the counting and how many people were there during the count?
There were 3 judges doing the counting. And there was whoever, the staff that were in the building. And then I believe there was a CPS staff member and a poll watcher.
Thank you.
I'm just going to say this: the implication here that there was something awry with Tina being a poll watcher, I think is off base. And there's no place for that here. And I'm sorry to hear this now.
I think the question is that I think the concern, or if there is a concern, was that it paid to be a poll watcher. The comment just indicated, I think that from what I gathered, and I didn't say it, but she got 70% of the votes. 7 out of 3 people who came in voted for it.
This is way out of bounds. Way out of bounds. I cannot believe what I am hearing right now.
Well, I don't know. It's nothing to get upset about. We're answering the question. This vote doesn't impact the results of the election. If someone has a problem with the results, they'll challenge it, and there's a process for doing that. So I think it's a reasonable question, so I don't understand why you would be upset about it.
Well, I'll tell you why I'm upset. It's a reasonable question, but I do want to say, well, if you say it's a reasonable question, but I do want to say this: every candidate had the opportunity to be a poll watcher. Every candidate had the opportunity to designate 3 total poll watchers, including themselves being one of them or someone else. I would have gotten those votes whether or not I watched the polls. So one is not related to the other. I am interpreting the number of votes I got based on parent support for what I stated my intentions were and what they have been since I've been on this board. So anybody else want to infer something else as far as why I got the votes I got, that is on them. The comment was about me, and it's my offense, and that is why I'm offended.
Okay.
And I just find it interesting that we're having this conversation and the people are offended. But last week when something similar was brought up about an election, there wasn't this outrage that something like this was being brought up. And it's very similar.
This is not the same thing at all. You are campaigning for parent reps.
Wasn't.
Same thing. I'm being accused of something underhanded by simply being there. And you got to say your piece. You came to the meeting late and got to say your piece. So I'm not sure what the big difference is you see.
Tina, I agree with you 100% that you should say your piece. I'm saying Chirag was saying he was outraged by the implication of the question. Last week I was outraged, or last month I was outraged by the implication of the question too. So I find it interesting that he would be so outraged and I think the questions are very similar.
All right. Any other questions about the certification or the process around the election? Again, this is not the forum to, air grievances. And there is if anybody's got a concern, there is a designated process. And I encourage everyone to, utilize whatever process you think you need to use and communicate whatever concerns you may have. Otherwise, we need to really focus on the motion that's on the table, and that's whether we certify the LSC election results. Now, again, the certification is symbolic in nature. It is not going to impact the results whatsoever. It also won't impact the people's ability to take whatever steps they want to take after this point. If you received the LSC communication that has all the dates on it, all of that still stands. And so I made sure of that prior to this meeting so I can answer any questions on that. So again, there's a motion on the table. It has been seconded. The motion is to certify the LSC elections. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. And so I'm going to take a vote now if there's no more questions or concerns. All right. All in favor? Mary, if you can count those.
Sorry, I'm forgetting my job already. There's 8 8 hands up.
All right, 8. All against?
There's 1 hand up. Oh, 2.
And I don't know if it's possible to, I mean, just the reason why I am voting against this is the fact that the entire basis of this election, the way that it was handled by CPS, I disagree with. I don't feel it was equitable. I feel that there are a lot of known issues with how ballots were mailed out or weren't received, and the choice of having parents and community members go in person, potentially risking their health to do so, just was not an equitable. And that is, for that reason, I'm voting against certifying it.
I agree. I am making the choice for the same reason. There's a lot of questions around equity, a lot of questions around access. I am comfortable with the results really either way, but I'm not voting to certify based on my concerns around equity and inclusion. All right, motion passes. Let's move on.
No tiebreaker, budget transfers and approvals. So this is revisiting the Lexia online subscription renewal, which I was able to ensure would not be in jeopardy because of the December 2nd meeting. They have told me that that will be fine. So this is again the renewal of the online program for reading. And I motion.
And this is for Lexia?
Yes.
All right, a motion is on the floor to renew the subscription for Lexia Online, transfer from $2,400 from the student fee to online subscriptions from internal accounts. Motion's on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Is there any questions or comments around the subscription renewal? All right, we'll go to vote. All in favor?
Unanimous. 10.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry.
Fundraising?
Fundraising. Yep. So this is the 2 fundraisers proposed from the Friends of Bulldogs for Minted and Dining In.
Okay, motion's on the floor to approve the Friends of Bulldogs proposals as carryovers from the last regular meeting.
Is this all or nothing? Are we voting?
That's what I was just getting ready to ask. Yeah.
Oh.
Mira, are you presenting these together?
Oh, I don't have to. I don't know. Would we prefer to discuss them separately? Or
Yeah, let's do it separately. Let's do it separately. So the motion will be for the Minted fundraiser.
sure.
Motion for the Minted fundraiser, as discussed in the November meeting. Is there a second for this motion?
I'll second.
Motion has been seconded. And so now, is there any discussion around the proposals as presented in the November meeting?
Mira, did you have to get special permission for this fundraiser because Chicago Board of Education did not want fundraisers?
Yeah, so in my conversations with the folks downtown that I spoke to about this, as long as the funds, the agreement was, as long as the funds are being used to support kind of our remote learning and the efforts that are being done, and not being used for any kind of like event that really can't happen because we're in a remote setting or things like that, there have been cases where people have moved forward with fundraising.
You know why they were discouraging fundraising to begin with?
I think there was a few different ways, and I can't speak to all of it. What I gather is some of it was around student fees, because student fees, the students aren't actually in class. So collection of student fees was was not supposed to happen or discouraged. And fundraising was really specific to if you're fundraising for things that you either couldn't do because of the remote learning environment. It was to put in place safeguards so that you were not collecting money for purposes that you couldn't use it on right now. That's my general understanding.
Mira, can you remind me where, this was for technology, right? Any funds raised from Minted and Dining In, are they both towards technology for remote learning, was it?
So the outline is stated that it was for staff to support staff with remote learning in terms of devices or additional equipment, to replace any devices of students that were need repair or were broken, and the Agassiz assistance program.
So this is the same, these would be going in the same places as the Bulldog app?
Yes.
Any other questions on the motion?
Wasn't that dining for a specific date and that's passed?
Well, right now I'm talking about Minted. My motion was about Minted.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay. Okay. All in favor to approve the fundraising motion for proposal, for the Minted fundraiser by show of hands, all yeses? You got the count, Mayor?
No, Shirag, I don't see your hand. Is it up? Yeah, okay, I wasn't sure, I'm sorry. 9 yeses.
And 1 no.
And 1 no.
All right, motion passes for Minted. You want to do the next one?
Yes, but I don't remember the date, Jackie. But my next motion would be to approve the dining in with Lou Malnati's and I believe it's 3 different locations that would be participating. Yeah.
Is there a second for the motion?
I second.
Motion has been seconded. The motion is to approve the proposal of Friends of Bulldogs for dining out nights at dining in for Lou Malnati's, 3 locations as discussed at the November meeting. Motion has been seconded. Floor is open for discussion if someone has a question.
Sorry, that's not correct, actually. The proposal was for just dining nights in for the remainder of the school year. It wasn't for Lou Malnati's specifically. The reason we wanted to have it voted on at the last meeting was because we had a Lou Malnati's night planned on December 7th that we have since canceled. So there will not be a Lou Malnati's night on December 7th. However, we would like to continue having the dining nights in option for the remainder of the school year.
Sorry, I stated that incorrectly.
Okay.
So I will amend my motion, and my motion will be to approve dining nights in.
I thought that the proposal that was submitted for it was specific to the Lou Malnati's.
It is.
No, I'm looking at it from the November meeting, and I believe it's the correct one. This is the Agassiz fundraiser proposal that was submitted by Patty on November 12th for dining night in monthly fundraisers, and it says monthly throughout the 2020-21 school year. It does not specify which restaurants. I think at the November meeting, if I remember right, Patty, we mentioned Lou Malnati's specifically because that was going to be the upcoming monthly dining night in. I can't get my words out right now. But so, yeah, the fundraising formula does not specify a location. It just says monthly for the 2021 school year.
Correct.
Yes, this was created actually for the October meeting, but Mira had not received word yet on whether fundraising was going to be allowed in time. So fundraising was not on the agenda, so we couldn't vote on it then. And then I switched it to the November meeting, and there was no agenda posted, so you guys could not vote on it. But we asked, it was questioned at that time if we could do a special meeting because of the Lou Malnati's night that we were planning for December 7th, which has since been canceled because that was not voted on.
So what restaurants is this going to be for?
Well,
does
Lou Malnati's will maybe host it again for us if we're lucky to get them back, but that's unknown at this time because I didn't want to pursue any restaurants until we had approval from the LSC. That's kind of has to go first.
So would there be outreach to all areas of the city? It seemed like the first one was originally geared toward 3 Lou Malnati restaurants on the north side. And I don't know if there was additional outreach that was done to any restaurants on the south or the west sides.
So as I said, we have not done any outreach to restaurants as yet because since October, we have been unable to get approval on this fundraiser. So if you're asking me whether that's the plan in the future, yes, that's the plan if we can get it approved.
I'm
So
confused.
if this gets approved,
What's that?
go ahead, Carrie.
I'm just confused because I thought what was proposed, I guess at the last meeting that couldn't be voted on was there was mention of the dining in night that was also going to incorporate the 3 different Lou Malnati pizzerias that are on the north side. And there was a date that was, I guess it was December 7th. And what I'm wondering is, since there was outreach apparently done because there was a date, whether or not it was canceled, that at one time did exist, that was the plan. And so what I'm wondering is, in conjunction with that, for that date, was there also outreach done to restaurants that would serve the south and the west sides of the city?
The answer to that question is, which is what I stated at the last meeting, Lou Malnati's was unique because they offered us 300 gift certificates to use as incentives for our Bulldogs Bop fundraiser for anyone that registered for that fundraiser. They offered to donate 300 free pizza coupons. So I felt at the time when they offered that, I was fairly certain that the dining nights was going to be approved because in conversations with Mira and at our meetings, it seemed that it was going to go in that direction. I felt confident in saying that we could potentially have December 7th as a night for dining nights in with Lou Malnati's at 3 of their locations that we felt covered a portion of our community. They only do a maximum of 3 locations, otherwise we would have gone further, but that was what we were able to get. So I guess maybe that wasn't a good idea for me to do because I didn't foresee this being an issue. I didn't foresee that the agenda would not get posted. I didn't foresee that fundraising would be off the agenda on the October's meeting. So I guess in that area, that was my mistake. However, once that was clear what was going on, we have not pursued any additional restaurants because I really don't know how it's going to go. So that's the honest answer, Carrie.
I appreciate that. I think I might not be clear with the question that I'm asking. What I'm trying to figure out is, I think, more the process and the expectation for what these nights would look like. Is it where there would be specific restaurants targeted or restaurant targeted for each night that, or would it be that there would be a variety of restaurants either that were outreach to and had committed to sharing a percentage of what was sold to give back to Agassiz, or whether it's just resources and restaurants in specific areas across the city that make up our community. And the reason
yes, ultimately, yes, we would like to have the restaurants be around the city so that many people can partake in that. So that is our goal. Whether or not we will achieve that goal remains to be seen. We are looking at different restaurants. We also wanted to look at restaurants owned by families of the school to help them. So that was going to be something we were going to be looking to as well. Whether or not we're going to find restaurants with multiple locations like Lou Malnati's, which is unique because they are around the whole city, it remains to be seen. This is new for us too, Carrie. We have never done this before. We have had all of our dining nights be dining nights out, which are community building events where families can gather at the same location and spend time enjoying a meal together while also raising funds for the school. Since we are in different times right now, it's a whole different ballgame. So yes, our attempt will be to get restaurants throughout the city so that there is equity for those who can't make it in the north side, for them to be able to get it on the south side. That is the plan.
Honestly, Patty, that's really the struggle. You know, that for me, that's always been my issue with this particular fundraiser, is that if you look at our state of the school, it's on the website right now, and it's kind of got a heat map of where our families are located. You know, we had 88 families in the 60657 zip code that would be within delivery range of those three restaurants. But in the 6040 or 60 up further north, Buena Park, Rogers Park, Edgewater, there was over 200 families in that area. And so that's the students in the community. When you think about the teachers, there's even more displacement. So, you know, I think the challenge on some of these type of issues, especially during COVID, where people would love a promotion like this and be able to be involved in it, is that they have to have access to it. And so if it seems like we're running promotions where only 60657 can even benefit from it, and I understand, you know, you're not going to find a restaurant on 79th Street. So if you said, hey, Oliver, I can't, you know, that's not feasible. But I think what we're talking about is, you know, equitable distribution around zip codes. Not every zip code, but zip codes that have large concentration of Agassiz families, you know. And so I think taking that state of the school, getting those zip codes, and maybe, you know, top fiving it and trying to see what we can do in those areas makes this an easier decision. I can only speak for myself, but I think in a time where we're talking about equity and access, and we're talking about the name change, and we're talking about all of these type of things, then we create a fundraiser that is for 60657 exclusively, or at least that zip code and the two adjacent area codes around it, zip codes around it. That doesn't seem equitable to me.
I can say one of the things that was discussed at the Friends of Bulldogs meeting, and I don't know, you know, again, it hasn't been explored yet, but we did speak about like the idea of a potential Uber Eats or like a delivery service that potentially we could partner with, or something of that nature as well, so that more zip codes could be potentially involved. But I don't think that that's been fully investigated, or if it is even possible.
And I just wanted to bring it back to the wording on the fundraising form. You know, the wording on the fundraising form specifies local restaurants and family-owned restaurants. So I think, you know, you can read whatever you want into that, but I think that's what we have to vote on tonight, is on the proposal. There's no specifics about which area of town it's going to be in, which restaurants. It just says local and family-owned. And I think we have to go based on that. I think otherwise we're just talking around, and it's just, you know, just to try to move this along if possible.
Nope, I'm fine with that. There's a motion on the floor, has been seconded. Motion is, Nick, I'm going to have you read it, what it says on the, if you could read it, just because I don't want to chop it up.
The motion is to approve the Dining Nights In monthly fundraisers for the 2020-21 school year.
All right. Motion has been seconded. All in favor? Mayor?
8.
All opposed?
2.
Motion passes.
You guys.
All right. We are at public participation. Mayor, did you want to read the statement?
Sure, I do. Members of the public are welcome to make comments and ask questions, but must sign in to participate. The public is called upon to speak in the order they sign in. The public is kindly requested to limit comments and questions to 3 minutes. Based on the comments or questions, the principal may address some concerns directly and, if necessary, create an action step for the LSC to follow up with the involved parties at a future date. While the LSC will do its best to address any comments or questions, when necessary, more time may be needed to adequately address a particular concern. And then I will go to this screen. And we had 5 people sign up, and the first was Molly Alvarez. Is Molly? Oh, there she is.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. First, just wanted to say thank you for the naming process, and really wanted to thank the people who started this 3 years ago. I know it's been a long journey, and I know that it was a harder journey than they expected, but I really appreciate the perseverance of those people to continue to bring this forward, and I'm super excited about our new name. So we'll look forward to that board decision coming. And thank you to the teachers and those who led the students through the process. Much appreciated. Couple of questions in terms of the reopening. Wanted to know if we could find out a little bit more, if you'll have more information coming on sort of COVID exposure protocols in terms of who will be quarantining. Is it a direct exposure? If a student's parent tests positive, does that student then have to quarantine? Does that pod have to quarantine? Sort of what do those levels of protocol look like? And then also, what does the communication look like in terms of exposure? How is that communicated? Is it just communicated to those students, that pod, the whole school, sort of better understanding that? Also, if a teacher does get either has to be quarantined or actually gets COVID, what is the scenario there with substitutes? Is that in person? Do those students then have to go remote? Just sort of, and I know this is all last minute, but any more information you can have coming forward. Also, in terms of in person, is there a max number of students that you're having in the hybrid model? So how many students would be allowed in a classroom on those days? I feel like at one point it was 15, maybe 16. I'm not sure if that's still the case. So any clarification on that? And then also, in terms of specials, will PE also be in the room, and will there actually be enough room, or what can be done in PE in a classroom setting, especially with the older grades as well? Let me see. I think that was it. Just one other thing, and just in hearing the last little bits of these conversations, want to say congratulations to the new board. As a member of the Friends of Bulldogs, I am hoping that there will be a more harmonious relationship between the two boards, and hoping that it won't be so hard to have conversations and support the kids and the teachers and the school with fundraising. We had this awesome Bulldog Bop, and kudos to Patty and those who worked on it. And it was a huge success, both I think from a community building standpoint, as well as a fundraising standpoint during very challenging times. And so I wanted to formally acknowledge that. I don't know if I've seen the school formally acknowledge or say thank you for that. So I just wanted to make sure that I said thank you to those involved in that planning. So I think that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Molly. Dana Carmen.
Hi. I also wanted to ask a couple of questions about the new school reopening. I know, Mira, you don't have all the info, so this is just, as you kind of build out your FAQ, things I'm thinking about too. You had mentioned different drop off and pick up protocols will be in place now. And I wondered if there was any thought given to maybe like a staggered entry or exit in terms of times, like maybe like a couple minutes apart, and whether or not there would be any supervision outside at drop off and pick up, or like, you know, at pickup, if it's going to be sort of like, hey, you know, pick up your kid right away and please exit the playground, you know, this way. Or I know, again, that that's all being worked out, but just kind of something maybe, you know, that I'm thinking about. And then I also wondered, tagging onto Molly's question about how many students you can max out at. I know a friend of mine recently had a situation at her school where actually they had so many kids want to come back in person, they actually had to ask some kids to drop it back, kind of like giving up your seat on the plane when they overbook it. I just wondered if there had been any thought given to what if the numbers are actually higher than you think they might be. And also in regard to numbers, just wondered if it was going to be a possibility that students may end up with a different teacher than they have now, if there's any consideration being given to one class being in person and then the other class being fully remote kind of thing. And then I think you answered the question about what about for kids with more than one teacher. It sounds like kids who are currently switching classes will still switch classes, except that the teacher will switch the class, not the vice versa. But I know some grades that used to switch classes are not now. So I just didn't know if the middle school would continue doing it. And then just also to echo Molly, I just wanted to say congratulations to the new LSC, and also thank you to the current board that is leaving for your service. And I also just wanted to, say a big thank you actually to Tina Holder-King for being our poll watcher. I'm not sure if everybody is aware, but there were actually some questions and issues surrounding the election that Carrie brought up, about equity in the mail-in ballots and all that kind of stuff. And actually the fact that our election went as smooth as it did, and that it maintained its integrity as well as it did, is actually almost entirely thank you to Tina Holder-King. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that, because she played a huge part in making sure that this election went as well as it did, smoothly and with integrity. So thank you, Tina. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dana. Patty Lenkoff.
Hi. A lot to unpack in this meeting. First off, congratulations on the 3 final names being submitted to the Board of Education. It's truly an extraordinary time for our school and for those of us especially who hoped for this moment over 3.5 years ago. So congratulations to you all for that. I want to thank the existing board members for their service to our school and wish continued success to those staying on. As someone who's been involved at this school and also attended LSC meetings, I wanted to take this opportunity to reflect on the past few years. It was my hope back in 2018 that the LSC would continue to work collaboratively with FOA, which is how we were known then, with the shared mission of supporting the entire school community and helping to make the educational environment the best it could be for both staff and students. I think it's fair to say that didn't happen. A democratically elected body with members from all parts of the school community is bound to have different perspectives and disagreement. But what should have been productive problem solving devolved into rancor, personal attacks, and bullying power plays. Good people were forced out of both LSC and FOA, and many families who witnessed the displays of these political posturing and bullying at LSC meetings found themselves reassessing their opinion of the school, and some even chose to leave. But I do think we can learn from this and use this experience to move forward wiser and with renewed purpose. We have so much to be proud of at this school: a strong teaching staff, students who are excited to learn, and parents who genuinely care about the well-being of the entire school community. This past year has been like no other, with the pandemic putting enormous pressure on schools to find creative solutions to entirely new challenges, and we need a healthy, functioning LSC now more than ever. I'm hopeful that we can now all start pulling in the same direction and see this school through what we hope will be the last few months of this strange and difficult time. FOB will continue to be here to provide community building and financial support. Thank you again to all of the parents, teachers, and staff and community members who have stepped up to serve our school. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Jonathan Beck. Is he still here?
Sorry about that. Good evening. I couldn't help but notice that in the already action-packed agenda for this month's meeting, there was not the semi-annual review of confidential minutes from closed sessions that's required by law. Given that the last review occurred at the July meeting, I thought it might be helpful again to bring that legal requirement to the LSC's attention, such that it might be rectified for one of the January meetings. I'd also like to take this opportunity to remind all returning and incoming LSC members that each of you is able to avail yourselves of not just CPS's LSC training, which provides you the minimum requirements for OMA and FOIA regulations, but also the state of Illinois' full OMA and FOIA training. You actually needn't be an elected FOIA or OMA officer, and it costs nothing other than the time. I'd encourage each and every one of you to familiarize yourselves with the law as it applies to LSCs, and I'd encourage any parents or community members to avail themselves of the same training, sans certification. Knowledge is power, and transparency is at the heart of our democracy.
Thank you. Marisol Hernandez. I don't, hold on, I'm scrolling through. I don't see Marisol here.
I don't see her either.
Okay. I don't see her here, and that was the end of public participation sign up. So I can,
Alrighty.
so I can go ahead and just go back through. So
Yep.
just kind of for context on numbers and results so far from what we've gotten turned in, 29% of families have responded that they would come back in a hybrid model. 22% would come back or would stay remote, and 48% have not yet responded. So just a little bit, of where we are currently. The capacity for pods is 15. So I can assure you of that. In terms of COVID exposure protocols and quarantining and direct exposure, that's going to be handled by the Office of Student Health and Wellness. And so I can certainly follow up on those questions, but I do believe that that's going to be a lot dependent on contact tracing and the number of questions that they ask around what the exposure looked like and how long and things of that nature. Specials will be in the classrooms, and that will include PE. So what they can do in terms of PE while they are in their classrooms will obviously look very different than being in a gym and running around. But Mr. Oni, I'm sure, will do his best. But yes, all specials will be in classrooms. Drop off and pickup protocols. Yes, Dana, we are talking about how to stagger those kinds of things, even if by a couple minutes, not to have bottlenecks or too many people coming in. People will have assigned doors. So I can say like preschool will go in by preschool, whereas they, used to come in a different way. They would exit the same way. K1, they would come in a certain door, and so on and so forth. But yes, we're thinking through how to stagger as well, and looking at different options right now for those procedures. In terms of teacher and will they have the same teacher? Would one teacher teach in person and one teach remote? That's really going to be dependent on the numbers that we get back, which is why it's so important that we hear from families what their preferences are going to be. And for middle school, they will still see different teachers for the departmentalization, but the teachers will be the ones to travel. But that is why we decided to do the self-contained for 3rd through 5th grade this year, is to minimize that when we did come back. But for middle school, they will have a teacher who would move to a different classroom. And Oliver, I will let you handle the semi-annual review of closed sessions.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Beck's correct. We are tasked with reviewing these, timely as soon as we can get that on an agenda, we will. And so it is, if it's something that we can add to our next meeting, otherwise it will be something that the next LSC will do, which I would prefer that we handle it. So that they aren't listed with any, psyched with any carryover items. So I appreciate the reminder.
And then I guess to echo the sentiment of many, and I did send an email to those newly elected members, I want to congratulate you and look forward to working with you. To those members who are not going to be with us, although we'll be meeting January 6th. This is your first or last sort of, I would say, big meeting. Appreciate the work that you've done and over the last, 2.5 years. And for some, Dave Wrench, much longer. We greatly appreciate your contributions and certainly getting through the work of renaming and all of those pieces in the not so, this time right now. So I echo that sentiment.
Thank you, Mary. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Shirag. And I guess just so people know, so that would mean Jackie, Shirag, Michael, Dave, Carrie, and Oliver will not be, they'll be back for January 6th, but. Or not, Shirag, you're shaking your head.
Kidding.
All right, and so
so action steps for the January meeting, we're going to have on there the reopening updates. We're going to have the voting on the closed sessions, and then public participation, right?
Correct.
And then the new LSC meeting, or not. So this current LSC will meet 6. The organization meeting for the new incoming council will be on January 13th at 6:00 p.m. And all of that information will be forthcoming.
All right. So we covered the next regular meeting date, which is the 6th at 6 p.m. I will motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second? Motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion about ending the meeting?
I just want to wish everybody a safe new year and happy holidays.
That's right. Happy holidays and have a safe new year, guys. All in favor?
Thank you. That was unanimous. No, I didn't tell you.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.